How's it going, people of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Welcome to a bonus add-on video, I guess, for Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, yes, I did do a very, very long No Way Home spoilers review. It is kind of like an hour-long podcast format of just me splurging every last thought I had. But I thought it'd be a good idea for you guys to send in some questions, theories, what I think could happen with the ending, the post-credit scene, what happens in the new trilogy, because it's kind of like a discussion series format like I've done with other series on the channel, such as the Batman. So basically, sit back, relax. We're going to dive deep into Spider-Man No Way Home, and I've been wanting to do this. I've just been wanting to talk about where things can go and what I think of the little blobby symbiote left over in the post-credit scene in detail, with you guys actually throwing some ideas at me. So yeah, enjoy this one, guys. I would love your feedback on whatever I'm about to say in this video down in the comments below. Let's bounce off each other that way and get some theories flowing about the new movie that is basically coming through Amy Pascal teasing 3 more movies, and Kevin Feige basically backing up that they are actively working on, at the very least, the next Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland. Let's dive straight into this with Andrew Lowell's comments. So he says, "Hey Boba, your videos always bring a light and joy to my day." That's very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you so much, man, for all the amazing videos. I do actually have a question for you about No Way Home. How do you think MJ and Peter will get back together, and how soon? I don't think having Gwen instead of MJ is a good idea, because that means that Peter is bringing a new girl into his life and putting her in danger, which he vowed not to do at the end of No Way Home with MJ. I really hope they ease into a relationship of Peter and MJ without her knowing for a while, just like it was foreshadowing in the scene with Peter and Strange. Hope this made sense. I can't wait for the video. Favorite movie ever? Now, I wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I believe there's another question from MaxGB10 saying, do I think that they will introduce Gwen or keep MJ or do a love triangle? Now, just to address all of these comments, so how do I think Peter and MJ will get back together, and how soon? This is such a interesting thing, and obviously this is what this video is all about. It's like none of us know for sure, but ideas are to be sprouted, and I think that it would be too easy for Peter to just attend college, get to know Ned and MJ in the exact same way, or how should I say it? Imagine you're in Peter's position, to expect MJ to kind of be wooed by him, if you know what I mean, just as easily. Well, it wasn't easy before, but to get back to where they were before will definitely be easier said than done, and I don't think it will be the case, and I think that they shouldn't do that. I don't think even necessarily by the end of the first college trilogy movie, so Spider-Man 4 for the MCU, I don't think MJ should be like even necessarily in a relationship with Peter by then. Now, this is interesting in of itself, because they are looking at it to be 3 movies, which kind of makes sense. Look at it in a kind of Star Wars saga-esque kind of way, 1 to 6. They are doing the next bit, and I do like it, considering where No Way Home left off. We've got a whole new blueprint for Peter now in a more super traditionalist kind of way. But getting back to that main point, since just for the assumption here, and with what Amy Pascal said, with how they are kind of looking at it as 3 more editions, and it kind of makes sense, you know, with Peter going to college, you can kind of do another 3 movies, I suppose. I think it will go more along the route of him trying to get to know MJ and Ned again, and this opens up new doors for Ned, and we'll get to that in a bit. But with MJ, it's just too easy to just be like, oh, work on her, getting to know her again, and just them already having that chemistry connection, which they will have, obviously, because it's MJ and Peter, but to get together again, no. I just don't think that's going to happen. Now, I do see some fans getting irritated, even at me, somewhat even speaking this idea into existence, and how much torture it could be for some shippers out there of just wanting Peter and MJ to not be dragged out, I guess you could say. But I think it isn't to be viewed as dragged out, my idea. I feel like what will happen is that maybe they will click at some point in the trilogy. This isn't to say that Zendaya's MJ won't be very much so in the first movie, the second movie, etc, etc. But I feel like Peter's attempts, or the ways of getting to know her, just won't go as he would like. And that is where we kind of get into the next stage, and with what you said about Gwen, and I don't want it to be a love triangle, I really don't, but I feel like if they really tastefully handle this, but something happens where maybe she gets in a relationship with someone else, and this will make fans feel even more for Peter. We know that they are endgame still, but that could lead Gwen to be a friend of Peter's. But that doesn't mean she has to know his identity. That doesn't mean it has to be a massive love triangle. As I said, MJ might not even be interested, but I do feel like it could go that direction. But again, the more I ponder this, the more it kind of seems a bit too obvious to do that. But I do feel like Tom Holland's Peter going to college does kind of open this possibility to me, at least the way I see it, and that he's going to try and be friends with his old friends again and get romantic with MJ again, but other things happen and he gets to know more people, such as Gwen maybe. Despite not having eyes for her at first, over the course of the first couple of movies, he might actually grow more fond of her than what she thinks. And I do feel like if you're doing that, yeah, things don't always really end well for Gwen Stacy. I don't feel like they'll retread the Amazing Spider-Man 2 ending, but I'm just basically repeating myself at this point. I don't really know where they will go, but I guess I'm trying to say is that I wouldn't be surprised if Gwen does come into the picture, even if Peter isn't interested at first. Maybe she's his new best bud and they low-key fall for each other over the first two movies. And I know that sounds so alienating to some fans, considering the end of No Way Home, how strong Peter and MJ were and how they would find each other again, but I think that is actually a part of it. The fact that she doesn't know him anymore, just like in the coffee shop scene at the end, he's gonna try and fail, I think, in the first movie, and there just won't be that connection, for her, at least. I think she'll be receptive to him and see like, oh, hey, Peter, like, I like you, kind of thing, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up in another relationship and Peter kind of, through his attempts again and again, through putting so much effort in there, maybe has to force himself to consider the possibility of not necessarily moving on, but like, what more can I do? Oh, hey, Gwen, we've been friends for a while. Oh, shit, I'm starting to maybe develop feelings for you. I don't know, but maybe that's too typical. Maybe it could be done in more of a Raimi way with how Gwen was in those movies, but obviously it wasn't like, as I said, Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield levels of romance. I feel like it could tread that path. But obviously at some point, at least by the end of the second movie, or maybe the midpoint of the second movie in college, MJ and Peter have already kind of connected together again. I basically don't, to answer your question, how soon, expect that to happen in the first movie. Although there will be flirty kind of chemistry moments for sure throughout. Like, for example, with how we had MJ with Flash in the first Raimi movie, even though she was with someone else, you had those looks between MJ and Peter where you could tell they basically liked each other. It's just MJ was with someone else. There could be little playful moments like that, but I do not expect it to happen right away. And that would be a gut punch to the fans, and I think they will know exactly what they're doing there. And ultimately, it could be a way for Gwen to be introduced as a friend, and maybe slowly over time, Peter does kind of like her. But maybe by the end game of that, he realizes and says to her, I can't be with you because even though I like you, I may even have low-key feelings, I am in love with someone else. They might just do it that way. Like, it could have been a thing, but he still just closes it off. So I was answering that last one for way too long. But Master of the Masters, I would love to see a nod to Spider-Man and his amazing friends, where his college roommates were also superheroes. I don't know if they're quite ready to introduce Iceman, but maybe just a character named Bobby. What are your thoughts? What college adaptation are you hoping to see for Spider-Man? So my first instinct to that is I wouldn't be surprised if there's characters named, like you kind of said there, to infer a world-building-esque kind of thing for these other characters, but I don't think that should ever happen in this college trilogy. I think one of the typical complaints of the MCU, whether you agree with this or not, and I can see both sides, I always strive to see both sides, is that no matter what, I do feel like Tom Holland's Peter Parker, even though, yes, he did do things completely by himself at many, many points, it never felt like a proper solo movie like the Raimi films and the Andrew Garfield films did. Like, those two versions of Spider-Man had other characters in it, like MJ, Emma Stone's, Gwen, all these other characters, but we had so many point of view scenes from Peter that it didn't always feel like, and I don't want to be one of those fans who says like he's being handheld by Iron Man or something, but do you get what I mean? These MCU first films of Spider-Man, I think it's hard to deny the fact that it always felt collaborative. I'm not saying he was never doing things alone or like he needed other people, but no matter what, there were more collaborative other character scenes with Peter all the time, rather than the ones where we see Andrew going about, Tobey Maguire going about in their own respective Spider-Man movies. So I feel like with your idea, as much as I kind of like it at the same time, in college I do expect, obviously, other characters in it, just like those first two Spider-Man versions from Raimi and whatever, right? But you see where I'm going with this. I do think that despite us getting a lot of things with the end of No Way Home, that final scene, making a lot of us very happy who had some gripes like what I've aforementioned, I think they have to treat this new Spider-Man, this new Tom Holland, who is alone now in his apartment, which I have utmost faith they will, because he's in his own apartment. Like, we're going to get scenes of him, like, coming back, still trying to be Spider-Man, struggling to make money. I feel like we are going to get what I'm saying. Like, it's going to be a lot more point of view driven, rather than point of view driven, but oh, look, there's Ned all the time, there's MJ all the time, or there's Flash all the time, and all these other characters, Iron Man. Do you know what I mean? I feel like we are going to get that, but I feel like if we went with what you were saying, like other roommates, college roommates were also superheroes, I feel like it would be like a crowded Spider-Man solo movie like the first three movies were. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me there, I feel like there's no denying that the Raimi films, the Andrew Garfield films, they felt a lot more solo-esque despite all these other characters being in it than compared to what, you know, Homecoming, Far From Home felt like. And I guess you could rope No Way Home in there, but that's an obvious, understandable one as to why there were so many characters. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at that. Peter in the next few movies, despite a lot of other characters, needs to feel like a solo film. Like, that doesn't mean just one character, Peter Parker, but I don't want him running around. Like, you know, in video games, like 3 or 4 player co-op, I don't think it should be that, because that's what those first 3 movies felt like. 3 or 4 player co-op on your PlayStation 5 or Xbox. That is not to discount the solo scene. I do want to stress this because I know someone out there will be like, oh my god, Tom Holland Spider-Man did go up against Vulture by himself. I get that, but you know what I'm saying. Next one's from Flicks with Joe. What did you think of the whole bridge fight with Doc Ock? It was personally my favorite scene in the movie. It had quips, the action, and Peter saving that admission lady's life. The most interesting part I find is the end. Wish he could have quipped with Goblin and fought him on the bridge too. Love your videos as always. Thank you, Joe. For what I remember, by the way, because I've only seen it once, and I really am annoyed saying that because I've wanted to see it twice so I could have an even better formulated opinion on the movie. However, as far as what I remember from the Doc Ock fight scene, I did enjoy it. I mean, as far as Spider-Man action, it felt fun. The dodging, the commentary from Spider-Man was Spider-Man-y. The only issue I had with the latter of, you know, not what you're saying, but the latter of that scene of what you point out, wish he could have quit with Goblin and fought him on the bridge too, is like, yeah, like that's one of my little bit of an issues with the movie, because if you've watched my spoiler review, whether you find this nitpicky or not, when they all go to the apartment for the curing phase of the movie, and this is where a lot of things get kicked off. You know, we had Doc Ock in the restraints with his arms wrapping around him because obviously the chip wasn't fixed at that point. The only thing I didn't like is, as you point out here, Peter Parker saw the Green Goblin glide in on the bridge. And he saw him throw out multiple pumpkin bombs. Obviously, we need to take into account a lot of people were gone by then, but Norman Osborn, who he knows later is this Green Goblin guy on the glider, tried to literally murder dozens of people with those bombs. Like, in his head, he tried to do that. So that's the only thing. I wish he almost didn't see Green Goblin at that bridge scene, or if, as you say, he did fight him to find out he did have super strength beyond just having a glider, because my issue is, in the apartment scene, yes, I know Norman was trying to help him develop the cures, etc., but he still could have done that bound, because I don't like that Peter had such an oversight with knowing that this guy, Norman Osborn, who he's letting wander around the apartment, help him develop these cures, which, as I want to emphasize again, could have done it with some Stark Tech restraints, which he could have whipped up in the machine, could snap at any moment. Oh, and wait, he did. So it's just like, why are you letting this guy, why are you restraining Doc Ock, who obviously understandably needs to be restrained, but also should this other guy with the mind Jekyll and Hyde personality should also be restrained. I mean, for crying out loud, Peter, you saw him try and blow up multiple people on the bridge. So that's, you know, that's why I really enjoyed that scene with Doc Ock, but I wish Goblin didn't come in at the end then, because it shows that Peter knew what this guy was capable of, or that he should have fought him before Strange teleported him away, because at least at that point, some people have said to me as a fan defense, the reason why maybe Peter was okay with him not being in restraints like Doc Ock was, is because he didn't know that he had super strength. That's a bit of a reach for me. It's like, okay, I can give you that one. Maybe he knows he could become that Green Goblin who can get on a glider, throw bombs out, and want to kill people, but maybe he thought he could handle it in the apartment. And that's where I can't really argue with that, because despite knowing that that was Norman Osborn, and he was happy to take Norman Osborn to his apartment, etc., etc., maybe he thought he could handle it because he didn't know that the serum that he took and everything gave him that super strength, as well as the split personality. But you see what I mean. As much as I loved that bridge scene with, and enjoyed it with Doc Ock and the Spider-Man action that we got, I do feel like there was a couple of weak points of CGI, like when they threw the cars, they did look like Play-Doh, if you know what Play-Doh is. Other than that, yeah, I find the problematic part is when Norman comes in on the glider. I love it, by the way, you know, with the pumpkin bomb just rattling down on the floor and then more and more and more of them come. Great, I love that. But it's like, then Peter, if you saw that, why did you just let this guy, you know, as he went to see him in Feast and everything, he knows that this guy could flip at any moment, but he didn't take the same measures with Norman in the apartment as he did with Doc Ock, which I think is a massive oversight. But hey, you may not care about that, but I personally do. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. I mean, that wasn't my favorite scene in the movie, just before we move on to the next one. Actually, my favorite shot and scene in the movie is where we had, it's kind of what I like to say, not calling Tom Holland's Spider-Man quintessential Spider-Man, but to be specific here, there was a quintessential Spider-Man scene in No Way Home. And that's when his mask was off after Aunt May died, the rain was kind of pissing down, you had Jameson like on the news after the destruction of the apartment building. I guess this, you know, continues off what I was just talking about with Norman Jekyll and hiding out, if you will, in the apartment building, because this is all due to that fight when he revealed himself as Green Gob the whole time. That moment when he was just in the rain, it was just like Peter is up against everything. He's lost everything. You have this bastard Jameson just shitting on him even more, and you have Peter just like trying to deal with the weight of the world on his shoulders. That was such a well-shot scene, and if anything out of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, that just felt like, yes, this is what I want to see. So Reese says, I hope the next trilogy introduces characters like Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn, other Rogues Gallery members like Kraven the Hunter, and hopefully we get to see the Vulture and Mysterio again. I also hope that he never changes suit again, and the whole trilogy, Peter will just keep his homemade suit and keep repairing it, etc. And slowly introduce Ned and MJ back into the story. I agree with slowly doing that. I don't think we should get romance by the end of the first movie, as I mentioned earlier. I want to see Peter interact with new characters. I agree. He meets at college and maybe even at the Daily Bugle. 100% agree. I feel like it would be way too cliche, tropey, predictable if he's like, oh, hey, MJ and Ned again. Even if they form a new friendship with none of the old memories, I would be almost okay with that, but it's still like these guys don't know who he is. So yes, it's obvious that to make some money for rent, he's going to go with the more modern digital age Jameson and probably get some recordings of Spider-Man. That would be cool to see. It's like the Raimi blueprint in a way, but modernized with a slight new take. I'm all for that. But yeah, we can't discount how, like, yes, it's going to be a bit of a gut punch to fans that he doesn't instantly get on with Zendaya's MJ again and all this or whatever, or maybe Ned. You know, even though it's low-key maybe foreshadowing with how he found out that the other Peter's friends became villains, I was like, well, I'd never do that. Well, now we've got a blank slate. And I do feel like it would be too typical for him to now, with no memory, become the villain. But I do see how they could go there, or a villain, or a deviation of that. However, yes, he absolutely has to meet new people. And that's why I would be okay with Gwen, as long as she's handled. I don't think it should be cliche like, oh, Peter's going to get so romantically involved with her to TASM 2 levels. No. I just think, even if you retread what I said earlier, long story short, tries it, keeps trying with MJ, and through just being friends with Gwen, he starts to get more fond of her, you know? And it just doesn't really go anywhere in the long run because him and MJ are endgame. As for Harry Osborn, I think there might be future questions about this, so I'll touch on it a little bit. It's just the only issue I have with No Way Home with what Peter is now aware of, because it's not like his memory has been reset. And some fans have given some defenses for this. So it's just like now, if they were ever going to do Harry, if not even Norman, like, but let's assume Harry, he knows that he needs to probably keep tabs on these people. Through No Way Home, introducing people like Lizard, I feel like they can't necessarily in the new trilogy, or at least they would have to come up with a really inventive way of doing it, that he now knows the identities of these villains. If there's a new ad saying, oh, Oscorp has brought this building, and they're now, you know, branching out in New York, he knows what to look out for with Oscorp. He doesn't necessarily assume that said person will become Green Goblin or said person will become Lizard or whatever, right? But he now at least knows that, okay, I need to keep tabs. But the fan defense for that is, okay, that could be the case. But maybe through Peter keeping tabs, he is kind of like, it might be a Batman Joker moment in some iterations where he inadvertently creates the villain through him being vigilant and keeping an eye on them. That could create one of them that's only assuming if within the next 3 movies they ever do retread Green Goblin again, or even if it's Hobgoblin or something like that, I don't know. It could be through Peter's hypervigilance of avoiding what he just went through in No Way Home. Oh crap, through me keeping an eye out, he does something that causes the accident or causes the creation. But with that being said, I don't think they will do Green Goblin again, and I this kind of sucks in a way because I do want Harry Osborn to come into the trilogy. This is one of maybe the problematic things about No Way Home, because as I said, even though I've just given a defense for it, after just doing Norman Osborn, if he now goes to college and he meets a Harry Osborn, I don't know. I really want Harry, but after what they did in No Way Home, I just don't know. I do feel like it's more likely they're gonna kind of go their own routes, him trying to befriend Ned again, him trying to befriend and get romantic with MJ again, maybe meeting new people, which is an absolute necessary thing that has to happen in my books, like whether it's Gwen or not, but at least new friends and stuff. But I do think as far as villains, it will be new villains, like Scorpion, or, whether it's Kraven, etc, etc. I do think there is room for a type of goblin, like, for example, the foreshadowed thing I mentioned with maybe how with Ned's reset memory, even though he seems to be a happy, quirky guy, he could still, I don't know, for whatever reason, become Hobgoblin. That would be cool, but again, it just feels a bit too predictable for me. But even predictability isn't always a bad thing, as long as they handle it in a really tasteful way. So you could still say, yeah, sure, I saw that coming, but it could be still really, really damn awesome. As far as your comments on the homemade suit, I 100% agree. I don't mind if there's upgrades, as you said. So, like, I do feel like he should stick with a fabric suit. I do not want relationships to be re-repaired through, even though memories are gone, he somehow, through Happy, I don't know, like, I don't know, just somehow access to another Stark Tech thing. No, do not give Peter Parker, like, I appreciate what they did, even though I overall wouldn't have signed off on it myself, but I still appreciate the Iron Man story in ways. But now, like, if they ever went back to that, just don't. We need the fabric suit to be maintained, and I think it's safe to assume that will be maintained. What they can do is Peter upgrading it. So, like, like how we got a TASM 1 suit with Andrew Garfield, and then TASM 2, it was different. I fully expect that. I fully expect Tom Holland's Peter to maintain it, but maybe edit it himself. And it's just believable through him, just changing his mind and upgrading the suit in the way that Andrew Garfield's Peter did. So I really feel like it will go that way. I want everything to be self-sufficient, self-made, web shooters and all. Like, I know he makes his own web fluid already, but no, everything needs to be completely him now. This is why I'm confident that the new trilogy will be more point-of-view driven Spider-Man versus co-op 1 to 4 players experience. Like, the first 3 MCU movies did feel like to me and a lot of other fans. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you get what I mean. It's different. But now I'm ready for more of a Andrew feel, Toby feel with single player character, but yes, other characters that he interacts with. So Cinematastic asks a very interesting question. Do you want Ned and MJ to regain their memory in the college trilogy? I personally don't, as I believe it would hurt the ending to this movie and basically undo it. I'm curious at what you want to see happen. I absolutely agree. I'm worried though. Like, I feel like they won't do it at first, but there's a possibility through some reason by the 3rd movie they may have changed their mind. You know how, like, initially, a way to liken this comparison to is, like, it did feel like they were playing with the idea of Uncle Ben, Peter feeling guilty over that, but recently the writers came out and said, no, like, Aunt May is the Uncle Ben moment for Peter. Like, even though lots of fans said the excuse of Peter saying, I know, as if he heard it before, they basically clarified and said that, no, like, it seems like Uncle Ben just, yes, tragically died of whatever, a heart attack or something, but this is his moment, Aunt May. So what I'm saying is, you know how it felt like they were doing different things, but then they finally felt like, oh, no, wait, we're going to do this. Because, for example, Peter's comments to Tony Stark in Civil War, when you can do the things I can do, and that kind of comment, it definitely inferred like something had happened. So with this, I feel like, no, we won't give the memories back, but maybe by the third movie, they might just find a loophole where somehow Ned and MJ can be a little loophole to Strange's spell. Please don't do that, please. I feel like it would undo the ending of this movie. So many people love that coffee shop scene. I did as well. It was quite heartbreaking. Peter having to, like, whatever you think of the movie, the logic of the spell or whatever, because I have some issues. I don't care. I like what it ultimately forges for this Peter. He is alone. He doesn't actually have anyone. There is no Uncle Ben left just because Aunt May was the Uncle Ben of the MCU. Like, he has no uncle or aunt, no one. No friends. If they literally, even if it's not in the first film, not in the second film, but by the third film, for some reason they regain their memories back, no. That would be such a regression. Such a regression. I don't care if, like, it comes across really tear-jerking, like, after 3 movies. This would be like 6 years away from now. We finally get that, like, recognizing twinkle in Zendaya's MJ's eyes. And it's like, Peter, that would give an emotional scene, but no, as you say, it would undo so much. So no, I do think that what I wouldn't be surprised, and maybe they should do it this way, is like, after in the third movie of getting to know them after whatever amount of time and getting close again. They've done the thing where MJ wasn't interested and maybe got with someone else, but then eventually in a Raimi Maguire kind of way, she was interested, and then they do connect. Maybe Peter can one day say, like, we've actually been here before. Maybe they'll come across creepy, I don't know. But yeah, I do, without rambling too much more, I do feel like if somehow MJ and Ned were to regain their memories, it would be so stupid. I think it would be, whatever logic the MCU would come up with for that, it would contradict Strange's spell. Like, oh, so if you can do it now, why couldn't you do it before, kind of thing. For even that reason alone, it would come across as a plot contrivance. Oh, like, the spell can be kind of broken now and you can regain your memories, but we couldn't do that as of the end of No Way Home or college movie #1 or #2. Do you see what I mean? So I would love to know what you guys thought of that, but I am in complete agreement with Cinematastic here. Next question comes from Kenny Hardy saying, considering the movie ends with Peter on his own and the Venom symbiote out there, do you think he gets the black suit in the next film? And who do you think will be the main villain in the next movie? I would have said Kraven, but Sony has a project about him in development, so another idea I had was Scorpion. Because of his Homecoming setup and history as Venom, then I thought perhaps we get a Tombstone / Hammerhead film with the Shocker as their hitman. So this one's a difficult one, and I think I'm just going to kill a few birds with one stone. Yep, from Oliver Lockwood here saying, with what happened on the end credit scene, would you want Venom to be built up throughout the entire trilogy and be the final movie villain, or just done straight away? And what other villains would you like to see? And then we have another comment here saying, I'm going to be satisfied if you just yell, Peter, in the Venom voice once. There you go. I hope we don't see that in the future movies. So, yes, interesting stuff here. Because I have lots of opinions on Venom. Just the way Sony have tackled it, I both appreciate it, but it's not like the vision I sign off on. And considering, like, the fact is that this Venom that we have in the MCU now is kind of like a baby of the Venom that has now gone back with Eddie, Tom Hardy's Eddie, to the Venomverse. There's all kinds of ways to see this, because that doesn't necessarily entail that he's going to grow to be the Peter or Eddie. I am taking the piss out of it, but I don't mean that in a malicious way, because I can enjoy, just let me get this clear, Venom in of itself. I don't think the first movie is anything special to the point of where the way for me to articulate this, would I buy it on Blu-ray or 4K Blu-ray? No, I really don't care. And that's just the thing. I love the design of Venom. Like, I think he looks so cool. But as far as the comedic attributes, I'm not trying to say that Venom isn't, kind of snarky in the comics and things, but the way they really tackle it here, like, when, in the trailers for Venom 2, we just see him, like, cooking breakfast with Eddie. It's like, oh, the eggs, Peter. No, not Peter, but Eddie. It's not, I don't want that for Peter Parker in the second, well, the first bloody college movie, or, well, let's just say second or third, because we don't know how long that symbiote's going to take to get to New York. But you see what I mean? That's not what I have in mind. And I know that sounds so entitled as a fan, but, like, I can express my opinion. It's just like, for my Venom in the MCU, for a black suit Peter Parker, That's not what I want. I don't want, like, this baby Venom in the MCU version to kind of take on Peter Parker, you know, when he jumps on him or whatever, however he fuses with Peter Parker and the Spider-Man suit. For Peter to hear in his head the whole, "Hello, Peter, do you want to go out today?" No, no. But here's the funny thing is, I do have a lot of optimism because this symbiote is, yes, it's technically a part of the Venom that goes, "Eddie," and all of that. It doesn't mean that he's going to act like that. I think the fact that Venom went back to his own Sonyverse, Venomverse, whatever you want to call it, with Eddie Brock, I feel like this little blob that will jump from host to host, I'm sure, and get back to New York, which is the reason why I wanted to include host to host jumping, is that, as you say, would I want him to get the black suit in the next film, or the other comments saying, do I want it to build up through the entire trilogy and be the final movie villain? I do feel like this little symbiote blob can have its own take. And that's what I'm happy about. Because, yes, even though it came from the Eddie one, it's technically its own thing. And I feel like, yes, even though many fans could argue it should still take on some characteristics of the thing it was a part of, because it's literally a bit of the blob left behind from Venom. So for all intents and purposes, on paper, it should kind of be the same Venom. I feel like the MCU, personally, I feel like this is their opportunity to do their own Venom. And the reason why I don't think, you know, with how they've done it in the Venom movies, Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock is like engulfed in like an exterior Venom body. I don't feel like they're going to do that with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. A way that you can get around that, even though it is a blob of the same symbiote, which is something we want to emphasize, because it's then it's like, well, why wouldn't he be engulfed in like a Venom? I guess your fan logic explanation there could be that through Peter Parker's willpower, like, he fights off the darkness or symbiote-esque hold enough that even though he will be Black Suit Spider-Man, maybe even going with that for a while, he doesn't get fully taken over, and the extent that the symbiote can affect Peter is just turning the suit black. Instead of, if Peter had less willpower and wasn't, let's just say, even Peter Parker in the first place, another, I guess, I don't want to say lesser person, but might not have as much resistance against the symbiote to the point of where it would just take over him. You know, to completely take over in the way that the Venom body engulfs Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock. That's my fan logic as to why when we do get the Venom symbiote from the end of No Way Home, eventually get to Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the college trilogy, yes, there will be that kind of Venom storyline where I'm sure, I'm hoping at least it will be a black suit, but that's the way it will manifest on Peter. It's just a black suit. But the bigger question here is that I've taken ages to get to is, do I think he'll get it in the next film? Well, this is a hard one because, you know, with the post-credit scene being a Venom blob, you could take that one of a few ways. For example, well, we're teasing you with, literally, there is a symbiote now in the MCU. Like, matter of fact. And we know the scene was teased in a Spider-Man film. This means that this symbiote is going to Spider-Man. But when? Because this is quite far away. So you could argue that could set up the next film to be the main villain, well, or like the main conflict is Peter having a symbiote or black suit in the ways I've aforementioned. But you could argue that no, just because you saw it at the end of No Way Home doesn't mean that would be the next film. It might take a while to go from host to host to host to get to New York. You might have another question like, why would he even go to New York to get Spider-Man? Well, I believe the fan logic excuse there could be that he has that, you know, as we know, symbiotes kind of share that kind of neural network in a way. He might want to go after Peter, like maybe he wants to connect onto Peter through knowing that Venom, of whom he just came from, who's gone back to the Sonyverse, wanted to go after that guy at the end of Venom 2's post-credit scene. Do you see what I mean? Like, so the logic is there as to why the symbiote will get to New York eventually, but I couldn't tell you if it'll be the next film or not. I genuinely don't know. I think, you know, it could even play into the factors of what I was mentioning earlier on in the video. Maybe through Peter trying to get to know MJ again in his first year. The stress of trying to earn money for the apartment. The stress of wanting his friends back. Wanting his love interest back. Imagine he had the influence of the dark kind of black suit. And how I said earlier, maybe Peter does something inadvertent to his own intentions to screw something like that up with MJ because of the black suit, and he isn't aware that the influence is over him at that time with the symbiote, that it pushes MJ away until like the second or third movie. Not that she won't be in it, but like maybe Gwen could come in, etc, etc. You see where I'm going with this. So there is a lot of logic to bring that symbiote into the first movie. Not only is it at the post-credit scene of the previous movie, but it could help influence him, or maybe screw things up further for Peter just trying to get his friends back, but through the black suit, influence, plus all the stress he's under, education, earning money, being Spider-Man. He's now got a bloody symbiote that might impact him and push people away. As for who the next villain would be, you know, if, let's assume that Venom is making his way over, or the MCU's Venom is making his way over the course of the first 2 movies, because, you know, it's interesting to think, if he's not in the first movie, that doesn't mean he'll be in the second movie. They could be saving it for the third and final one. But yet again, the more I just hear myself speak a second ago, I do feel like the Venom symbiote screwing with Peter's head in his first year of college could really set a decent foundation as to why it lags, or puts a slow motion on how long it takes to get MJ back in the ways I've said. So maybe he will be the first movie villain, or conflict, as I say. But if not, then yeah, I do feel like it won't be anything like, you know, Green Goblin or anything. It'll be, you know, one of the other villains like Kraven. But then again, as mentioned, like, it seems that they're doing their own project with Kraven. So maybe it would be somebody who's already somewhat existing, and that is Scorpion. But it's really hard to know where exactly they're going, because at least with these next movies, they definitely do have a few, you know, like a spiderweb diagram. They have, well, no pun intended there, but like literal many different avenues they could go down that all technically work. No matter what, cannot be dealing with whatever they do with Venom. I mean, he's definitely coming. That symbiote is coming. I cannot stand, like, I'm not saying it has to be as dark and edgy as maybe Spider-Man 3's, but I do prefer that grounded tone a bit more. But I know, as I've aforementioned, Venom can be a bit jokey in a sense, even, and snarky in the comics, but I do not want
Peter! Oh, you're gonna get to class, Peter! You're gonna be late! Oh, is that MJ? Oh, Peter!
No. I know people enjoy that. I even do, in the sense of like, okay, this is just a separate vision, and I can maybe laugh and enjoy, but if I'm to take it seriously in the next MCU Spider-Man 3 movies, it cannot be that. No. This is an interesting question from Zed Gub here, saying, do you think they will retcon the Venomverse into Andrew's universe? Now, or it could, you know, vice versa or whatever, right? This is so interesting, because I've heard chatter, like everyone else has, that, oh, maybe Sony want Toby and Andrew to somehow have a future still in movies, whether that is their own movie, or more likely that people are saying that it's not that Andrew will get another TASM 3, it's more that he could appear in other Sonyverse movies, which is kind of what you're saying here. Like, that means they could kind of low-key retcon, or make it that the whole time Tom Hardy has been Venom and everything, that was actually in Andrew Garfield's universe. And that could work, but I can't put any stock into anything, because this is all hearsay, it's all rumors, none of it is confirmed. But what I will say is, like, I could believe, even though I have my, you know, thoughts about and opinions about Venom, that, yeah, they could, if Andrew agreed to continue, and I can imagine Andrew maybe saying yes to this, and how, at least through appearing in cameos, or maybe doing an Andrew Garfield Spider-Man crossover with Tom Hardy's Venom, that it can continue the story of his character, because that's one thing a lot of people liked about No Way Home, is that we did get some context as to what happened after Gwen Stacy. He became a bit more of a ruthless Spider-Man. He stopped pulling his punches. Some people took that as him killing. No, he just didn't give a crap. Like, if you were like a crook or a thug, he would just web you up, and like, he was being a little bit less gentle, but no, he wasn't a murderer. But now, at least, if they do something like this, let's say Venomverse or Sonyverse is kind of Andrew Garfield's one, that they could give more opportunities for him to film scenes, or maybe even do like a spin-off or whatever, but maybe not an actual direct TASM 3. I don't think, like, I do feel like maybe Andrew Garfield has moved on from that part in his life. I'm not pretending to know this guy, but that's why he was perfectly happy to have 40 minutes, give or take, in No Way Home. That makes sense to me. It gives some clarity on the character afterwards and all of this stuff, but what's kind of confusing me as to why everyone thinks that now, just because he agreed to do that, which, you know, with the scenes that he got, I thought were kind of a good amount. I don't know if he's ready or would want to actually do a whole other movie. I feel like that's a bit wishful thinking, just from where I'm standing right now. I'll be very happy to be proved, like, I'm not saying proved wrong, because it's not like I said no either way, but it's like, I would be very happy if they said, oh yeah, Andrew Garfield is going to return in a new feature length or whatever thing. I would be down for that. But in terms of me believing, I feel like he was down to do the cameo scenes and the scenes in No Way Home, which was a lot more than what I thought we would get. Like, it was like half an hour or so, wasn't it? It was quite a lot of scenes. And apparently, they filmed even more, apparently, for the end of the film that they cut, giving us more of an idea of where Maguire went and where Andrew Garfield's Peter went in their own universes. But apparently, the chatter is saying that there is more to come, maybe, or they're at least investigating what they can do with these characters. And yes, as you point out here, do you think they will retcon the Venomverse into Andrew's universe? I could see that happening as one of the low-key things that he could agree to. I just don't think an Amazing Spider-Man 3 would necessarily happen, because people are already talking about this, like, you know, and the way I see it with my brain is like, okay, well, if you have Venom, Tom Hardy's Venom, being canon to The Amazing Spider-Man, and you bring back Andrew, you've then literally got a symbiote going on with Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the MCU, and then you've got a symbiote thing going on with another Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield and Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock. Like, I just don't believe they'll do that. It doesn't confuse the audience, because I think everyone will understand the separate things going on because of No Way Home, setting up how these are different Spider-Men. But just, I feel like it would not necessarily dilute the brand or the product, but having two Venom storylines going on, it just, I don't believe that. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So whatever these chatters or whispers of a continuation of Maguire, or maybe more likely Andrew in the future, I don't know if it will involve really Venom, because we've got like the Venom character, or at least a symbiote in the MCU, making his way at some point, whether it's the first movie, second or third college movie in Tom Holland's future potential trilogy. Do you see where I'm going with that? Like, that's how if I zoom out the box of hype with all of these rumors, it kind of seems a bit more unrealistic the more you dissect it a bit. But that doesn't discount Andrew appearing again. Now, Trip Hazard posted something that I've seen before, and it's kind of a neat theory, but I think if you think about it too much, there's too many problems that I think do undo it. But I don't know if any of you have heard this before, but I wanted to include this just in case you found it a kind of cool kind of fan theory. So, do you think an argument could be made that the events of No Way Home were directly responsible for the endings of the original trilogy, the Raimi films? For example, Doc Ock had a redemption arc in No Way Home, and he would have returned to that end part of his universe in Spider-Man 2, the exact moment he left with the power and the sun in the palm of his hand, and that's why he chose to make that sacrifice. And the same could be said for Norman Osborn, who after his impalement returned to his normal self. Also, he went, oh, you know, that moment. And there's almost a funny meme where Peter sends back Norman cured, right? And he just goes back to like the oh moment right before the glider gets into him. And that's why he's like normal Peter saying, don't tell Harry. The thing I think that completely undoes all of this is that, for example, in Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock's chip was still taking over him. In No Way Home, it got cured, so if he went back, the machines were still talking to him, so I feel like that's not really smooth. But even for, like, the larger picture, Peter sent this would completely undo what he tried to do. Peter sent these villains back cured so that they would live. So the issue with this theory is that if they get sent back to just die, so like Doc Ock, Norman Osborn to get impaled again, what a redundant No Way Home plot. Like, he's sending them back to only die anyway. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I ultimately would say no to this theory. I don't think an argument could be made. I think it can work in a funny, memey kind of way. It's like, oh, like, maybe I could see this, but no. The way I choose to believe it is that Doc Ock did get sent back, but he could have escaped. If you rewatch the final scene in the Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock, when he was pulling down the sun into, like, the water, he could have made his way out. But he says, I don't want to die a monster. So he kind of, like, lets himself die, I guess. But in the No Way Home cured version, he kind of goes out, and the chip is fixed, so he can kind of live, I guess. But as far as Green Goblin, I believe Norman would get sent back to the point of right before the glider goes up, and before he just, you know, sends it to try and kill Peter, and it doesn't happen. I don't think, you know, because again, the big problem is with if he goes back, Norman goes back to the moment where the glider is already coming at him. It's so silly that the whole plot of No Way Home would be Peter cures these people to send them back to literally just die anyway. So I for that very reason, that's probably not the case, like the theory, because it would completely undo what Peter was trying to do in the film, in No Way Home. And lastly, Morgie39 says, given that you know you will critique the movie after watching it, do you think that affects your enjoyment of the film / takes away from the experience of watching the movie? I would expect a critic to be critical, so I'm just curious if your experience differs when you watch something you know you're going to review versus something you know you won't be reviewing. I would say no. It happens either way. Throughout the years, I've grown more critical, so the way I guess I would rephrase your question is that me just reviewing things in general, and I guess, like, I would like to view myself kind of getting better at my so-called job, if you know what I mean, is that through me seeing things that I feel like 4 years ago, let's say I never did this YouTube channel, I would have just attended the movie, and this isn't saying, oh, people who don't notice things are stupid. No, 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 no. I'm just saying through having this conversation all the time, through me doing what I do, and always engaging and seeing things in the script or logic or whether it's, you know, plot holes, plot contrivances, whilst balancing that with a good movie, it's good themes, it's characters. I would say through me being exposed to that a lot more often, it impacts me regardless when I go see a movie versus my, I guess, normie-esque version of myself. The reason why I wanted to include this question, by the way, is I feel like it will help address some of the issues I had with No Way Home, that some people were like, oh, Boba, you look at things too intricately. It would be dishonest of me as a critic, I guess you could say, on this channel to review a film and only mention the film's strengths and praise it in that, and not also acknowledge it and not acknowledge its weaknesses. Because it's interesting to me sometimes when I get comments scolding my critical opinion, it just makes me think, so, okay, can films only be praised? You're watching a review. So, like, if you're only going to on the internet, on YouTube, to watch a review that agrees with your opinion, that's not really a comprehensive review, is it? So I always say, like, you can enjoy a film whilst being critical about it. So ultimately, what I'm trying to get to the bottom of here with your question is, no, if I watch a film that I'm not reviewing, no matter what, I will still see through my exposure to trying to see how good a movie is versus subjective and objective without bias consensus on it. I will still always notice some cracks, some plot convenience moments, despite if I'm not reviewing it. The enjoyment levels, whether I'm reviewing it or not reviewing it, will always be the same because I've exposed myself so much to seeing things like this in a movie or a TV show that it will happen regardless. And that's kind of like a blessing and a curse in a way, because at least no matter what, like when I see a movie, as I always say, there's subjective entertainment, but then I can remove that subjective bias. For example, I love so many things about No Way Home. Do not get me wrong, I really do. But if I, as a reviewer, as I say, you know, if I try and do a really good comprehensive job, remove my subjective enjoyment, the bias, like, because I kind of have to, and, you know, I'm not unfair and disingenuous, so I'm going to mention the, you know, convenient things in the movie or some of the issues I may have found in the movie that they could have executed better. I will say that. It's just, I think a lot of people these days, when you kind of see that, and they just don't think about these many things, or maybe it just doesn't appear to them. Like it didn't to me. When I used to not be as exposed to this or watch things, a lot of things just flew over my head, and I saw nothing but the awe of the movie, which this movie definitely is. On an entertainment level, the awe of it is just really good. That's something I will praise No Way Home on again and again. I just think that when some people just have that in their minds and then see a review of mine praising it, but then just coming up with some critical takes on it, it's just alienating to them. And I think that's unfortunate, because I don't get why people ultimately watch reviews and can't understand that to review a film properly. Let me put it this way, it just wouldn't be honest of me as a reviewer for me to not address the movie strengths as well as the weaknesses fairly. Because otherwise, if I just ignore the weaknesses, well then, oh, I'm being dishonest, like literally, and I'm just being like, oh, this film is perfect with absolutely no flaws whatsoever, but no matter what, when you express that, people get pissed off. But I think that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I think that has been a long video delving deep into Spider-Man No Way Home, the spoilers, where I think things can lead off after this, with a lot of your guys' help and your thoughts, you know, springboarding me into all of these speculative, blabbery, I don't know, rambles that I've done. And your job now is to give me your rambles about my rambles and see where things can go from here on out. Give me your opinions and my opinions, whether you disagree with them or agree with them, or expand upon something that maybe I completely had an oversight about. Maybe with something to do with the symbiote making his way and how it could affect Peter. It could be done in a different way, where I was like, oh man, that could make sense even better. So I'm really looking forward to reading your responses. As I always say, whether I can reply to each and every one or not, I read every comment. It's very easy for me to do that on my phone, so I'm always scrolling, reading the comments. So if you got to this part in the video, I'd love for some of you to prove it by putting the hashtag, and you can capitalize this in whatever way you want.
Peter!
I know that's random, but it just goes to show that some of you made it to this part. I know you could just skip to this part, but don't do that. Do not pretend to be one of the ones who made it the whole way throughout the video if you just skipped here and then put that hashtag along with whatever comment you were going to post anyway. But you guys are the real ones if you've made it this far. If you're somehow brand new here, do subscribe. Like this video if you did enjoy it. And other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you, people of the MCU, in the next video. Goodbye.